So far we have been touching different aspects of profiles of Buddhist leadership. And the topics that we have covered, introduction to leadership, and then Buddha as a great leader, and Buddhist Sangha as great leaders, lay Buddhist leaders, Buddhist perspectives on leadership, and then we had a review, midterm examination, and then we also discussed about Buddhist leaders in the past, contemporary Buddhist leaders, and then today we are going to discuss about role of a modern Buddhist leader. Final review and final examination. Your final presentation will be held next week, Monday, as we have done last time in the midterm examination. So you will also meet. We will meet together in a Zoom meeting, and then you will do a presentation for 7 minutes. Along with your final paper, we will be done with our profiles of Buddhist leadership. Course. Regarding a role of a modern Buddhist leader, we need to talk a little bit about Buddha's management skills. Buddha had a lot of Sangha. Sangha means his disciples, all the Buddhist monks and nuns, and also the lay devotees, male and female devotees. So men and women from all different castes of India, they joined the Buddhist order. During that time in India, caste problem was a really big issue. Women were also not given priority in India. Therefore, there were a lot of discriminations against women. Buddha wanted to open up his Sangha community for all those people, irrespective of their caste differences, regardless of their religious belief or their business background or whatever. He welcomed all of them, and once somebody entered the Buddhist order, everyone would be equal. Everyone would be regarded as equal in the Buddhist order. There is a simile in one of his suttas. He says, just as all different rivers from all different corners of the world all flow to the great ocean, once they enter the great ocean, they all become same salty taste. So just as every river joins the great ocean and becomes one, so is all the people, men and women from all different categories of society. Once they enter the Buddhist order, they will be regarded as one united Sangha member. Whether they are men and women, noble and ignoble, rich and poor, it doesn't really matter. Lower caste, upper caste, it doesn't really matter. And even good and good people, even bandits like Angulimala, and once they entered the Buddhist order, they were practicing and they achieved arahanthood, and they were very highly rated and regarded as great monks by the Buddha. And kings, entrepreneurs, all educated, uneducated, all different people were treated equal in the Buddhist Sangha. And Buddha's exemplary leadership qualities are really amazing in this regard. Buddha was a very wonderful leader, and he practiced everything, and he led from the front. And whatever he said to the monks and the lay devotees, when he addressed those Sangha community, he would also follow these things, and he would not lead them without practicing all by himself. He himself was practicing all these things before advising the monks. His honesty, his compassion, his loving kindness, and his wisdom, his humility, his simplicity, his exemplary lifestyle, all these are trademarks of Buddhist and his management skills. He was very honest, and he was very compassionate, and he was so full of loving kindness to all sentient beings, and he was very wise, very humble and simple, great teacher. He would be able to sit under a tree and on the floor in a cave inside the deep jungle. He wouldn't mind. He would walk barefoot. He would be able to walk miles and miles. And being himself a member of the royal family, next in line to the kingship, and then he came down to the earth so humble and so simple, and he would be able to walk alone, just come closer to the Mother Earth, and he would also be so full of loving kindness and compassion. And he would lead his community of the Sangha with all those exemplary leadership qualities. So these are the cornerstones of his leadership qualities. And those exemplary lifestyle, this exemplary lifestyle motivated many young men and women of those days, and they would very happily join the Buddha, and they were very impressed, and they were able to follow all those beautiful teachings of the Buddha, and then they themselves were able to achieve their spiritual goal. And with regard to the rule and the leadership, for example, the people who lead in Buddhism, there are 10 virtues of a ruler. Like when there is a ruler, the ruler has to have these 10 virtues. Number 1, dana, liberality, generosity or charity. Number 2, sila, morality. And number 3, parichaga, comfort. And number 4, ajjava, honesty and integrity. And number 5, madhava, kindness or gentleness. And number 6, tapa, restraint of senses and austerity in habits. Akodha, non-hatred. Avihimsa, non-violence. Khanti, patience and tolerance. Aviruddha, non-opposition and non-enmity. These are what we call Dasa Raja Dharmas. So Buddhism is a way of life. What is mainly essential according to the noble philosophy of Shakyamuni, the Buddha, is to follow the Eightfold path leading to complete emancipation, Nibbana. So what is wrong to conclude that Buddhism is interested only in such lofty ideas and high philosophical thought, ignoring the social, economic, and political welfare of the people. Buddha was a marvelous repository of loving kindness and compassion towards all beings, and was greatly interested in the happiness of not only the mankind but of all other beings as well. To him, happiness was not possible without leading a pure life based on moral and spiritual principles. He firmly believed that such a lifestyle would be possible only under favorable material, social, and political conditions. He considers such conditions as a means to a higher and nobler end. So, in Kutadanta Sutta, Buddha explains that in order to eradicate crime, the economic condition of the people should be improved. The relationship between the employer and the employee should be made cordial, mainly by the payment of adequate wages, gifts, and incentives. The kings or the governments or the rulers should take this fact into serious consideration and keep the people happy and content, so that consequently the country would be peaceful and crime-free. Not only did the Buddha teach non-violence and peace, he also personally intervened in quelling disputes in the field of battle through his Sublime Dhamma. For instance, he intervened in the case of friction between the Shakyas and the Kolyas and prevented a deadly war. Again, King Ajatasattu was about to wage a war against the Vajjis, that was prevented from doing so by the Buddha, entirely on the valuable advice of the Buddha that war was averted. Further, our chronicles, Sri Lankan chronicles, Mahavansa and Deepavansa say that the Buddha visited Sri Lanka on 3 occasions, and having suppressed certain disputes through the Dhamma, establish peace in the country. Therefore, we see that while the Buddha put across his philosophy successfully, he also advocated the maintenance of peace and cordiality throughout, which was absolutely essential for spiritual development. He had shown how a country would become corrupt and unhappy when the heads of its government become corrupt and unjust. For a country to be happy, it must have a good and just government. How this form of just government is evolved is detailed in his recommendations entitled The Royal Virtues, or 10 Virtues of a Ruler, what we call Dasa Raja Dhamma. This comes from Jataka Tales book. So here, dana means liberality or generosity or charity, the giving away of alms to the needy. It's the duty of the king to look after the welfare of his needy subjects. The ideal ruler should give away wealth and property wisely without giving into craving and attachment. In other words, he should not try to be rich, making use of his position. Sila, morality, a high moral character. He must observe at least the 5 precepts and conduct himself both in private and in public life as to be a shining example to his subjects. This virtue is very important because if the ruler adheres to it strictly, then bribery and corruption, violence and indiscipline would be automatically wiped out in the country. Next one is comfort or parichaga, making sacrifices if they are for the good of the people. Personal name and fame, even the life if need be. By the grant of gifts, etc., the ruler spurs the subjects onto more efficient and more royal service. Next one is ajjava, honesty and integrity. He must be absolutely straightforward and must never take recourse to any crooked or doubtful means to achieve his ends. He must be free from fear or favor in the discharge of his duties. At this point, a stanza from Sigalova Sutta, Digha Nikaya, a relevant declaration by the Buddha, Chanda, Dosa, Bhaya, Moha. If a person maintains justice without being subject to favoritism, hatred, fear, or ignorance, his popularity grows like the waxing moon. Chanda means favoritism, and dosa means fear. Dosa means hatred or anger, and bhaya means fear, and moha means ignorance. These are very dangerous things. These can be instrumental in someone's engage himself or herself in a lot of corruptions. And meaning if a person maintains justice without being subject to favoritism, hatred, fear or ignorance, then his popularity will grow like the waxing moon. And next one is Madhava. Madhava means kindness or gentleness. A ruler's uprightness may sometimes require firmness, but this should be tempered with kindness and gentleness. In other words, a ruler should not be over harsh or cruel. Tapa means restraint or census and austerity in habits, shunning indulgence in sensual pleasures, and monarch keeps his 5 senses under control. Some rulers may, using their position, flout moral conduct. This is not becoming of a good monarch. So, restraint of senses and austerity in habits are very important for a ruler. Then, akodha means non-hatred. The ruler should bear no grudge against anybody. Without harboring grievances, he must act forbearance and love. At this instance, there is a story of a certain royal pupil and heir to the throne who had been punished by the teacher for an offense, and then he took revenge by punishing the teacher after he became a king. In the Jataka story, there is a story like that. So political victimization is also not conducive to proper administration. Akodha, non-hatred, is very important too. Next one is avihimsa, non-violence. Not only should he refrain from harming anybody, but he should also try to promote peace and prevent war when necessary. He must practice non-violence to the highest possible extent, so long as it does not interfere with the firmness expected of an ideal ruler. Khanti means patience and tolerance. Without losing his temper, the ruler should be able to bear up hardships and insults. In any occasion, he should be able to conduct himself without giving in to emotion. He should be able to receive both bouquets and brickbats in the same spirit and with equanimity. So, Khanti, patience and intolerance, very, very important qualities of a ruler. Last one is avirodha, non-opposition and non-enmity. The ruler should not oppose the will of the people. He must cultivate the spirit of amity among his subjects. In other words, he should rule in harmony with his people. Now you see the Buddha in his dispensation has emphasized the fact that the nature of the subject depends largely on the behavior of their rulers. Therefore, for the good of the people at large, he set out these Dasa Raja Dhamma, or the 10 virtues of a ruler to be practiced by those administrators. So after the advent of Buddha Sasana to Sri Lanka in the reign of King Devanampitika in the 3rd century BC, the long line of Buddhist kings would have kept to Dasa Raja Dhamma in fostering good governance. So this is really very famous in traditional Buddhist country. It's also interesting to note that in India's foreign policy, the 5 principles of Panchasila, which is itself a Buddhist term in accordance with Buddhist principles. And Dharmasoka, the great Buddhist emperor of India, last time we learnt about him, he was contemporary and a good friend of King Devanampitika of Sri Lanka. And he had applied to his administration Buddhist principles, and authenticity of which is proved by his rock edicts available in India and even can be seen today. So, for example, in Thailand, where Theravada Buddhist concept is in practice, and His Majesty the King is loved by all in the country and held in very high esteem with a lot of respect. So His Majesty seated on the Bhadrapit throne beneath the 9-tiered white umbrella state in the Baisal Dakshin Hall of the Grand Palace had pronounced the ancient oath and oath of accession to the throne, which says, "I will reign with righteousness for the benefit and happiness of the people." The word righteousness is the key, as it leads back in time through over 2,500 years of history to the Buddhist concept of kingship. So the ideal monarch is expected to abide by these 10 virtues of a ruler or Dasa Raja. The ideal monarch should have these things. These Dasa Raja Dhammas are also some of the very key factors of Buddhist administration and leadership. And next, I would like to talk about the 10 paramitas. You know, in Buddhism, we talk about these 10 perfections or paramitas. Theravada Buddhism, we talk about 10 perfections. And then in Mahayana Buddhism, they have 6 paramitas. In Theravada Buddhism, we have further extension up to 30 paramitas. The Paramita, Upaparamita, and Paramatha Paramita, threefold, and 3 by 10 becomes 30 paramitas. So all those great bodhisattvas, when they practice, when they fulfill their paramitas, they have to also follow these things, and they have to fulfill these paramitas. For example, the first one is the perfection of giving, dana parami. The second one is the perfection of virtue, sila parami. And the perfection of renunciation, nekkhamma parami. And the perfection of energy, virya parami. The perfection of patience, khanti parami. And the perfection of truthfulness, satya parami. The perfection of determination, adhitthana parami. And the perfection of loving kindness, metta parami. The perfection of equanimity, upekka parami. And the perfection of wisdom, panya parami. So these dasa parami or 10 paramita, important parts of one's becoming a Buddha or Pacceka Buddha or even Arahantas. So these are the final goals of any Buddhist. In Theravada Buddhism, for example, you have three goals. To either of them would be your final goal, either by becoming a Buddha or becoming a Pacceka Buddha, Samma Sambuddha, Pacceka Buddha, or Arahanta. One has to fulfill these paramis or these 10 perfections to achieve that final goal. So this is again very important. Imagine the leadership qualities. So the leaders always, they are role models. Once they become perfect, once they come to the top of their leadership, they should already have these beautiful and powerful spiritual qualities like generosity and the morality and all this energy, the patience and truthfulness and loving kindness, equanimity, and the wisdom, and all these things are really very powerful qualities of a good leader. So, for good governance, Buddhist practice of paramita can be really helpful. And then, of course, we have in Buddhism very famous something called 5 precepts of Panchasila, as we discussed before. So when anyone, if somebody wants to claim himself or herself a Buddhist, lay devotees, they have to follow these rules. When they say, I undertake to observe precept, to abstain from taking life, and I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from taking what is not given, and to abstain from sensuous misconduct, and to abstain from coarse speech, and to abstain from intoxicants as tending to cloud the mind. So these 5 precepts are again really playing a very powerful role in Buddhist society. So if someone is interested in following Buddhism, they have to follow these things. So again, I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from killing living beings. That means you respect others' life. When you respect others' life, you naturally become secure your own life because you respect others, and then others will respect you as well. I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from taking things not given. So in this case, you do not steal, you do not take others' property. So you respect others' property. That is their hard-earned property. So when you respect others' property, when you take care of others' property, when you help others' property, and then your property will also be safe. And I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct, for example. So that means you also respect your others' family life. So when you do that, our society becomes very healthy, and our society becomes much more harmonious, and also it helps us having good relationships, family relationships, and then it's also good for health reasons. And so in that way, sexual misconduct, this third precept also is very important for lay followers. I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from false speech. So to be truthful is a very, very important rule in practicing Buddhism. So when you become truthful, when you become sincere, when you become honest, everyone around will accept you and will respect you. Especially for a ruler, you have to be truthful. You have to be sincere. You have to be honest. Otherwise, sooner or later, your subjects will start to lose their trust, and that will be disastrous to your administration. So, for a good leadership, these precepts are really important. And the last but not the least, I undertake to observe the precept to abstain from distilled and fermented liquor, drinks and drugs that causes intoxication and heedlessness. And this also, we can see today, lots and lots of young generation succumb to this unfortunate misery of drugs. So this fifth precept is very important for our society, especially today, our young generation. They are addicted to drugs that causes devastation in their own life, and also in their family members. And also such people are becoming nuisance to the society, because they start stealing things, and they also behaving very unruly manner. And so our society is degrading. Our human values have become very low quality. People lifestyle has become very low because of these things. So these five precepts are really important qualities of a good Buddhist practitioner, good Buddhist devotee, and also they are very important for a good Buddhist leader. In fact, if you go through these five precepts, we don't necessarily see anything as such that other people can also not follow these. That anyone can follow these. Any ruler, if they follow these conducts, these moralities, they can be really very wonderful people. And any other people, whether you're a Buddhist or not, if you follow these rules, if you follow these principles in your life can be very meaningful, and you will be a wonderful human being. Then we have something called for Brahmaviharas. Brahmaviharas are also very useful teachings in Buddhism. These Brahmaviharas we consider as some of the most powerful teachings again, like loving kindness, and then metta or compassion, and sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So these Brahma Viharas play a major role in a good Buddhist life again. And for a ruler, if you have these qualities, you can definitely become a very exceptionally good moral leader and spiritual leader, plus a wonderful leader that you can do a lot of service to our society by following these, by adhering to these wonderful conducts. So, for example, here metta means loving kindness. Metta means immeasurable, infinite, unconditional love towards all sentient beings. There is no discrimination, no boundary when it comes to metta. Compassion is described as something that you show to someone when someone is suffering, when someone is in a miserable state. The other people should be able to show their sympathy, show their compassion. So that is karuna. And then mudita means sympathetic joy. This is even more challenging, in fact. Like when somebody is happier than you, when somebody is more smarter than you, when somebody is maybe better looking, you're better off in every field. And then can you also still have that sympathetic joy? Or that person has done tremendously well. because of his own good conduct or whatever, his hard work or his good karma or whatever, can you be happy about that person's progress, that person's success? And if you can do that, that is called mudita. That is a powerful practice again in Buddhism. That is what we call sympathetic joy. And upekha, even more higher when it comes to practice equanimity. Whatever happens around, you don't feel disturbed. You maintain serene, you maintain calm and peaceful inner nature of yourself, so that you can easily manage anything, especially for a good leader. This can be very wonderful values that can be adapted to. So for Brahmaviharas. And these are the four unprofitable directions. And here Chanda means agati, the doing bad way through will, because sometimes when you have favoritism, there is a chance that you do something wrong to help your own favorite people, and those can be another extreme unprofitable direction, the going a bad way through hate, because if you are angry with someone, even then you might do something wrong, so you might do some discrimination towards others. And bhaya is the fear factor. When you are afraid of other people, then there is always a chance that you try to suppress them or try to destroy them or whatever. So fear is another unprofitable direction. And moha is the delusion, the ignorance. And that's another way that you might do something harmful to others. So these four unprofitable directions are also not very good. So those people in the leadership especially, they should be mindful about these things, not to follow this favoritism, and not to be carried away by hatred or fear or delusion, so that you can be strong within yourself and maintain your inner peace, and should be able to lead your country in the right manner. And yes, of course, this Noble Eightfold Path is another very, very powerful practice in Buddhism. And so this is the Noble Eightfold Path, what we call noble. So this is something not really average. And for somebody to find the true path, he or she should have the right view. If your view is wrong, everything about your practice can be disastrous. You might, because of your wrong view. So right view, the true understanding of how reality and suffering are intertwined, is very, very important practices. So this Noble Eightfold Path, having established the reality, cause and end of suffering in the final noble truth, the Buddha taught his disciples the 8-step path to awakening, because they represent the actions and comportment of one who lives in accord with these 8 aspects of Buddhist practice, described as wise and skillful and correct and simply, we can call it right. So that is why they are called Samma. Samma means right. So what is right view? So right view is true understanding of how reality and suffering are intertwined. So you need to have a good right view, and then right resolve, samma sankappa, the aspiration to act with correct intention and doing no harm. So this samma sankappa, you should have that compassion, you should have that good will and not ill will, so that you can have a good resolve or good pure thought in carrying out your duties. And right speech is abstaining from 4 kinds of wrongful speech, abstaining from lying, abstaining from divisive speech, and abstaining from abusive speech, and also abstaining from unwanted speech, like gossip or something that is not useful or meaningless. So these are also important, especially in practicing, in leading someone, in leading a community, in leading a country. For a good leader, if you have the right speech, your word will be respected by your citizens and your followers, by your students or whatever. So your employees, everyone. So if you are a leader, you need to be very, very powerful and sincere and honest and good in your speech. Right action. And this right action include the kind of practices that you are doing, and not harming others, not taking others' life, and also not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct. These are part of the five precepts too that we already discussed before. So for a good leader, these can be very useful practices too, like not to engage in these misconducts and wrongful activities by the body. And right livelihood is like you can do something, you can do a business, you can do any lifestyle, but make sure you are not going against these ethics, like ethically sound living, being honest in business dealings. For example, there are five kinds of businesses to be avoided in Buddhism. One is Satta, animal husbandry is not advised in Buddhism, because Buddhism is promoting non-violence. So they uh, always want to practice non-violence and to practice compassion, loving kindness to all sentient beings, including the animals. And then Sattha Vanija means weapon business, because weapon business can be easy money, very lucrative business, but in Buddhism, it is not recommended in Buddhism, because that can be disastrous to other people's life, no matter what. You see how people use weapons, guns, and all kinds of bombs, and what is the ultimate result? You will end up somebody's life and property. So weapon business is not recommended in Buddhism. Sattva Visa is toxic things, like even chemical fertilizer or whatever. Like for unlawful gains, if you do use these things, that can be again disastrous. And so Visa Vanija. Majja Vanija is alcohol business. Alcohol business is definitely not a part of Buddhist practice. We already learned about five precepts, and in five precepts, alcohol, drugs that cause intoxication is not advised at all. So Mansavanija is again like slavery or human trafficking, and all these things are also not part of cut business in recommended in Buddhism. So when you have this right livelihood, you also have to make sure that you earn, you can be rich, you can do a wonderful business that is perfectly right, but then you have to also follow some ethical conducts. And right effort is endeavoring to give rise to skillful thoughts, words, and deeds, and renouncing unskillful ones. You have already some good, wonderful attitudes, practices, moralities in you. When you have it, you, of course, hold them dearly, and then you can improve further. There are some things that are some good things that are not in you. You have to make an effort to inculcate them in you, to improve those good qualities in you. And if you don't have some bad qualities, don't also don't try to practice these things. And if you already have some bad qualities, get rid of them. So these are the four kinds of efforts in Buddhism, what we call right effort or samma vayama. And then right mindfulness is a very, very important practice and very popular tool. Being mindful of one's body and one's feelings and mind and mental qualities. When you have that mindfulness practice in you, you can definitely improve your lifestyle. You can be a very, very wonderful leader, spiritual leader, or a political leader, whatever leader. If you have this mindfulness for everyone's life, that can be useful. And if you want to go ahead and improve your spiritual journey, this can also be really, really productive. And then right concentration, practicing skillful meditation informed by all of the preceding 7 aspects. So this is like the crux of your practice. This is the most important practice. Concentration, focus, and pay attention to whatever you do, and live here, right now. When you do, focus on one thing and work on that, and that way you can be a very skillful leader, very skillful meditator, very skillful teacher, practitioner, anything. So again, Noble Eightfold Path is a very powerful teaching and good, wonderful moral conduct that someone can follow if they want to be good leaders. And I also want to talk about this. This is called Satta aparihaniya Dhamma, 7 conditions of welfare. So these Satta aparihaniya Dhamma, or 7 conditions of welfare, are also part of Buddhist administration. If you have a community, if you meet frequently and hold many meetings, that will be very, very, very good, because you meet each other and you share each other. You can share and care for each other and also get to know each other, and that way is really useful. And then meet together in unity and rise in unity and perform their duties in unity. Unity also is very good. It's not only meeting, but meeting in peace. And can you also discuss in peace? And also, can you, when you finish your meeting, can you also leave the meeting in peace? That is really important. So you can carry out your duties in as a cohesive unit and enact nothing not enacted, abrogate nothing that has already been enacted, and act in accordance with the already established ancient principle. So, when, for example, if you want to do something just because of your present condition or your own ulterior motive, if you try to change the rules and bylaws and all the stuff, that's not going to be good. That's not really recommended in Buddhism. That is not part of 7 conditions of welfare. In 7 conditions of welfare, you see, you have to stick to your rules and your bylaws, and you have to um, follow those conducts and ethics, and that way you and your community can work together harmoniously and support and respect, venerate, and honor the Vajian leaders. So this actually was taught to Vajis. There was a very wonderful kingdom called Vajis those days. And those people were following very high ethical conducts in their administration, following the Buddha's advices. And so the Buddha said, if you support, if you respect, and if you venerate and honor your elders, and you pay regard to their worthy speech, you listen to them, your elders, seniors, you respect them, that is a very, very good condition of welfare. And also, no women or girls of their families are detained by force or abduction. So women should be respected, girls should be respected. This is another very important condition of welfare. for a country. If the leaders are making sure that their fellow citizens and their fellow employees or co-workers or those people who work under you, if they are safe, then that can be very happy unity, very happy community. So support, respect, venerate, honor those objects of worship, internal and external, and do not neglect those righteous ceremonies held before. So sometimes people have some rituals, some rites and rituals, so many things that they have been following for ages, but without any harm, without um, any damage to the society. These are just harmless and peaceful rites and rituals. So you should respect them, regardless of your religious belief or whatever. If people do conduct such things, then you have to respect them. And then rightful protection, defense, and support for the arahants shall be provided by the rulers, so that arahants who have not come may enter realm, and those who have entered the realm may live in peace. So good monks, good people, good spiritual leaders should be able to come into your city, come into your place, and they should be able to live peacefully and harmoniously without any problem. If your country or your area, your city, your region is safer for those great spiritual masters, they would come. And when they come in, all the people will be eventually benefited. So it's very, strategically also, it's very good to have those religious places. That is why it's important to have those religious places, centers of peace and happiness. They are very useful and helpful to maintain a good, peaceful society. So this Satta aparihaniya Dhamma, or 7 conditions of welfare, are some of the key factors for a Buddhist leader. So this Satta aparihaniya Dhamma, or 7 conditions of welfare, are also very important factors for a Buddhist leader. In Kalama Sutta, very, very powerful teaching of Buddha is taught in the Kalama Sutta. And it's called the Buddha's Charter of Free Inquiry, instruction to the Kalamas. In Kalama Sutta, Buddha talks about Kalamas. In Kalama Sutta, Buddha talks about very powerful 10 things. This gives an amazing capacity and the validity of Buddhism and Buddha's free inquiry. It is called Buddha's Charter of Free Inquiry. And this sutta is taught to the Kalamas. These are the instructions to the Kalamas of Kesaputta. And here, Buddha talks about 10 things. Do not believe anything on mere hearsay. Do not believe in traditions merely because they are old and have been handed down for many generations. Do not believe anything on account of rumors or because of people talk a great deal about it. Do not believe anything because you are shown the written testimony of some ancient sage. Do not believe in what you have fancied, thinking that because it is extraordinary, it must have been inspired by a god or other wonderful thing. Do not believe anything merely because presumption is in its favor, or because the custom of many years inclines you to take it as true. Do not believe anything merely on the authority of your teachers and praise, but whatever after thorough investigation and reflection you find to agree with the reason and experience as conducive to the good and benefit of, of one and all and of the world at large. Accept only that as true and shape your life in accordance with it. So this is a really, really powerful way that the Buddha gave this freedom of thought. He gave this amazing freedom of thought to those to his disciples, to his followers. I think Buddha's this powerful teaching has given a very special status, and it's a very modern outlook to Buddhism. Considering the fact that during that time India was under tremendous social hierarchy and discriminations against caste system and also the discriminations against women and so many other things were happening around during that time when the Buddha was kind of a revolutionary leader. The way he provided the freedom of thought to all the followers, all the leaders, really attracted many rulers. Many kings were really very piously following him, and wonderful, very great leaders. For example, King Bimbisara and King Ajatasattu, King Kosala, uh, and also many other kings were also there uh, following his teaching because of those modern qualities of his teaching. All these are really wonderful practices and helped Buddhism to be great way of living and also for those rulers to rule their countries in the right manner. These teachings were really helpful. And Buddhist theory of organizational leadership. I would like to say a few words about some of those wonderful books. Some of the books that I would books and articles I would like to recommend for this leadership lesson. And now we already so far we have learned a little bit about the Buddha's teachings for a good governance and for to be a good leader. What kind of qualities one should have and what kind of ethical considerations and requirements for a good leader. All these are very wonderful. And then I would also like to pay your attention to some of the articles and books. For example, Buddhist Theory of Organizational Leadership by Mark Krieger and Satinder Dhiman. And here, the intent of this chapter is to create the foundation for a Buddhist theory of organizational leadership. There are threefold objectives here: to identify the principles of leadership embedded in Buddhist psychology and philosophy, and also to understand how representative Western-based theories of organizational leadership, including authentic value-based and servant leadership, have been predated by Buddhist theory of leadership that has existed for 2,600 years. And also, number three, to identify the implications of a Buddhist leadership theory for organizations in the 21st century. I have provided this article for you to have a good look. This article is a very good academic article written. This article was published in the Palgrave Handbook of Workplace Spirituality and Fulfillment. And the intent of this chapter is to recreate the foundations of, for a Buddhist theory of organizational leadership. The objectives are, these threefold objectives are there. We find that a Buddhist theory of organizational leadership offers significant insights into how individual and organization can effectively adapt to change, not only at the individual level, but also at the group and organization level. So to illustrate the theory, these authors present two founder leaders of profit-making firms who have espoused and strive to lead by Buddhist principles. So I hope this can be a very useful article. And then I particularly was very interested in going through this my Wu's PhD thesis on spiritual leadership, a Buddhist approach. This is a really wonderful book, and his thesis, Spiritual Leadership, a Buddhist Approach, in Durham University. He wrote this in 2018. So this study examines spiritual leadership from a Buddhist perspective in the context of a transitional economy, Vietnam. So this study examines spiritual leadership from a Buddhist perspective in the context of a transitional economy, Vietnam. And in his abstract, he mentions Vietnam is undergoing significant changes in blending traditional values with contemporary ones, which creates a complex and dynamic social setting for exploratory research. This study explores and examines how spiritual leaders in organizations interpret and enact Buddhist teachings and principles in Vietnam. And also, the outcome of the preliminary quantitative study examining spiritual leadership in the context of Vietnam informs a mixed methods study in which the qualitative phase, guided by a critical, realist, informed, grounded theory approach. So he follows this theory called critical, realist, informed, grounded theory. And these findings suggest that Buddhist enacted leadership is a process of self-transformation and operates as a skillful means involving multiple leadership identities to flexibly and mindfully respond to contextual challenges. I have provided this copy of this thesis for you to have a look. This is a really, really good one, a new one. And here, Mai Wu, he talks about, in his chapter 1, he gives the introduction to research background and objectives. And in chapter 2, he talks about spirituality, spiritual leadership, and preliminary study of spiritual leadership in the context of Vietnam. And then also we can find spirituality and workplace spirituality and spiritual leadership and preliminary quantitative study testing Fry's spiritual leadership. We are going to talk about Fry's a little later. His spiritual leadership model in the context of Vietnam, and also interpretation of survey results. And then in chapter 3, he talks about positioning and comparing spiritual leadership with other relevant leadership theories. And then here we have spiritual leadership versus servant leadership, spiritual leadership versus ethical leadership, and responsible leadership versus spiritual leadership, and then authentic leadership versus spiritual leadership, and things like that can be really useful for somebody to talk about leadership, spiritual leadership in particular. And in chapter 4, he talks about Buddhism, engaged Buddhism in Vietnam, and the application of Buddhist principles in organizational studies. Here he talks about Buddhism. Is it a religion or a philosophy or a psychology? And then Buddhism and engaged Buddhism in Vietnam. And he talks about Buddhist principles and concepts and Buddhist skillful meanings and implications of Buddhist principles for organizational studies, Buddhist principles for understanding economics, Buddhist principles for desire and happiness, Buddhist principles concerning wealth and social responsibility, Buddhist systems thinking, Buddhism and economic sustainability, Buddhism and environmental sustainability, Buddhism and social sustainability, research in Buddhism and sustainability, corporate mindfulness and mindfulness from a Buddhist perspective, and then leadership and Buddhism, which is a very important topic that he covers there too. And in chapter 5, he talks about the research methodology and all. I think, so the first few chapters are really very, very important for our study. I recommend if you go through at least some part of this thesis, you can really have a good idea of spiritual leadership. And then, this Louis W. Fry, he talks about towards the theory of spiritual leadership, and this is the kind of theory that actually was adopted by Mai Wu. So Louis is an American scholar, and Mai Wu, he did his PhD thesis in England at Durham University. So, and this really good causal theory of spiritual leadership is developed within an intrinsic motivation model that incorporates vision, hope, faith, and altruistic love, theories of workplace spirituality and spiritual survival. Very wonderful surveys and methodology to find a good spiritual leadership. This also can be very useful to everyone. Okay, and I would like to talk about this book called Michael Carroll's The Wonderful Leader, 10 Principles for Bringing Out the Best in Ourselves and Others. And he talks about the 10 talents of a mindful leader. It was published by Trumpeter, Boston and London in 2007. There is an introduction, the tradition of a mindful leader. And then in part one, he talks about the inspiring the best in ourselves and others, and opening up to workplace realities, overcoming self-deception, 4 parables, and the art of sitting still, mindfulness meditation. So this is another good book, I think. And the 10 talents of a mindful leader appears in part 2, simplicity, poise, respect, courage, confidence, enthusiasm, patience, awareness, skillfulness, and humanity. And in part 3, he also talks about bringing our full being to work. And here he talks about synchronizing, engaging the whole, inspiring health and well-being in organizations, and establishing authenticity. And apart from that, in part 4, he talks about the practices and exercises, and especially meditation, contemplation, contemplative activity, and training the mind. This is again a good book. I recommend you read this for your future research, even for your presentation. If you are interested in doing something, you can talk about that as well. And then we have another one, resonant leadership, renewing yourself and connecting with others through mindfulness, hope, and compassion. Another book by Richard Boyatzis and Annie Mackey that I would like to recommend here. Then there is another book called Resonant Leadership, renewing yourself and connecting with others through mindfulness, hope, and compassion by Richard Boyatzis and Annie Mackey. And here, these authors also talk about 9 qualities of great leader, such as great leaders move us, the great leaders challenge, dissonance is the default, waking up to resonance and renewal, intentional change, mindfulness, hope, compassion, and be the change you wish to see in the world. And this is another interesting work. If you are interested in this book, also can be really useful one. This was Harvard Business School Press, Boston, Massachusetts. It was written in 1998. Can be another handy book for you to have a look about the resonant leadership. With that, I would like to talk a little bit about the final term presentation. We do have a final term presentation next week. So come join us. If you have any plan to join us as a presenter, you can send us the presentation, and this is for a 7 minutes presentation. And then I have given all the details about the presentation in the Google Drive. Please have a look and go to Google Drive and study materials, and there is week 9 and week 10. You can have a look in week 10 folder. You can have a look at the presentation details and how you have to fill the form, RSVP form, and also there is a schedule that you can yourself fill the time slot. You can allocate your timing over there, and then all the things that you need to know about the presentation are there in the Google Drive folder. Please have a look. And if you have any questions, you are welcome to send me an email or just text me, and also we can have a Zoom in meeting if needed. Okay, with that, we conclude, and good luck to all of you, and wish you all a very wonderful time ahead. So if you have any questions, you can always email me or you can text me, and even we can have a Zoom meeting if you need any help. And I wish you good luck and see you again then.